this is basically what you're doing when you're smashing up a hill on the bike.
No. That is the movement you're doing. That is actually the opposite of the muscles you're using. What's up guys, Jesse Coyle here. Welcome to another video. In this video, we're gonna be looking at Phil Gaimons' top 4 climbing tips for people who live on the flats. We're gonna be watching it through. I'm gonna give my comments and thoughts on the things he says and see what we can learn out of this video. So let's jump over to YouTube and take a look.
Hi folks, now today on Pro Tips, we're gonna tell you how to train for climbing if you live somewhere.
He's pretty freaking lean. There is nothing to him. His upper body is still tiny. There's nothing to his arms. His legs are still pretty shredded. That is impressive for a guy who's not racing full time anymore. Far out.
So what I would do, and this is the super old school method, the oldest school it gets, is you stick it in your 11, or actually I've got a 10. Shout out to SRAM Axis. You stick it in your hardest gear, you look for a headwind, and you go right into it. And what you do is you simulate the climbing position. So, you know, you're in Florida, you basically just live in your drops. But when you're training for climbing, you sit like this, you sit upright, and kind of pretend that you're going uphill.
So 3 things there. So he's saying, ride in your hardest gear, and find a headwind, and ride in your climbing position. So 2 of those I agree with. Riding in your climbing position, so more upright, perhaps sitting upright on the hoods or on the tops. Opening up your hip angle, which you will be doing when you're climbing, I think tick, good tip. Riding into a headwind, yes. So the whole idea behind that is when you're climbing, your speed's obviously slower. So your bike has a lower inertia, and therefore there's a small but significant change in how you need to apply power throughout the pedal stroke due to that lower inertia of your body and your bike moving. So lower speeds equals a slightly different pedaling stroke, which takes some getting used to. So the idea that you would ride into a headwind to take some speed off and therefore would give you lower inertia and simulate climbing, I think that's valid, good tip. Although you can't really make up the weather to get a headwind when you need it. The third thing he said there, which is ride in a big gear, that would just give you a lower cadence. I think that's not valid. That's not realistic. When you're climbing, people climb at a higher cadence. Just because you're going uphill doesn't mean you need to be grinding and pushing a big gear. So I think the whole big gear thing, that's rubbish. But the other 2 tips I think are really good.
You just grind away in the hardest gear, and that kind of simulates the consistent strain that you're getting. Like when you hit a regular climb, feel free to use your little ring and normal gear.
No, it's the slower speed that's simulating the climbing situation. The slower speed, the lower inertia that's simulating climbing. Pushing a big gear isn't simulating climbing. It's just simulating pushing a big gear.
But the very steady strain of climbing will simulate that. So I would just do kind of like 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off into a headwind. And when I did that, I would come from Florida directly to like a real bike race somewhere with hills, and I would do all right. I'd be able to hang, and that was pretty much like my best simulation was that move.
There's other things you can do there. So obviously riding into a headwind is one way to slow you down, but obviously there's other ways that you can slow yourself down. So things like riding perhaps a gravel bike or a mountain bike if you have it. Those are going to roll slower, take some speed off, and will simulate climbing better. Things like so he's got a handlebar bag here on his bike. That can take some speed off. So anything you can do is to slow you down. Wear baggy kit, slow tires, training tires, wider tires, lower tire pressure. Anything that's making you go slower is going to help you simulate your climbing. Going in your full aero kit with your deep wheels on, where you're doing 200 watts and you're sitting on 35k an hour, isn't going to help you simulate climbing. So anything you can do to slow you down is of assistance. The
second kind of tier, the mid school, would be if you're on a trainer, stick a phone book or 2 under it. You know what I mean? You don't have to do they have phone books anymore? Get a copy of Draft Animals. You kind of need 2.
Some of the promotion he does for Draft Animals, I'm pretty sure that's the book he wrote. It cracks me up when he slips that in there.
That grade, but there is when your legs are a different position, when you're sort of more upright, you're using the quads more, using the hamstrings more. and it is a little bit more of a specific.
Yeah, good point. And this is really valid. So if you're on the trainer and you want to simulate climbing, lift the front wheel up, get your body weight shifting differently in the saddle, and that slightly changes the muscles that are how the muscles are firing and which muscles are predominantly generating power. So that is really valid. Simulate your climbing positions both in terms of where you're holding the handlebars and also the position of the bike by lifting the front wheel up.
Muscle group that you hit when your body is at the climbing angle. So simulate that on your trainer. Again, like 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, but focus on a big gear. That's sort of the strain that you're looking for.
No. So totally disagree. So riding with a big gear and a lower cadence isn't simulate climbing. And also on the trainer, especially if you're in erg mode, being in the big gear is the worst thing to do, because that's just going to increase the speed of the flywheel and therefore give you more inertia. So if you're doing especially workouts on a trainer in erg mode and you want to simulate climbing better, use your easiest gear. That way that flywheel is going to be spinning way slower, less inertia, and that's going to simulate more of the pedal stroke style you're going to get when you're going up a climb. So, on that one, especially if you're in erg mode, totally the opposite of what he's saying there is what I would recommend. Hey guys, I'm midway through editing the video, and just a quick message to say that if you're enjoying what you're watching, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, or sending the video to a friend. It'll help us get these videos out to more people and would help the channel out a lot. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the video.
I don't want to see the hill. Actually, I do want to see the hill that's this steep. I really do, and I want to KOM that thing. But you can stick it here. This guy will automatically sync to your Zwift.
Yeah, so if you've got a Wahoo kicker climb, you can do that. But the other thing there is if you're not in erg mode and you're just in sim mode, try and ride routes like if you're in Zwift as an example, and you're just in sim mode, regular riding around, and you want to improve your climbing, actually ride the climbs on Zwift. That way, the Zwift is going to be giving the trainer a simulated gradient, and that's going to make you use an easier gear and slow the inertia of the flywheel down as well. So sim mode as well. If you're on Zwift, ride the climbs. Don't just stick to the flats. Pretty obvious one, but it does make a difference.
This is some solid fake climbing right here. This is like a 33% grade.
That's so. Don't go that far. That's totally gonna crush your nuts.
So that's part one. Is the on the bike portion.
So that's on the bike. Some good stuff in there. I think it's valid. Some things in there which are actually the opposite, but overall, yeah, not a bad advice.
Slow that guy down. No brakes on that.
That would have really burnt his fingers. I don't know. He must be a good actor. That would have freaking hurt.
There is some upper body involved. So if you think about climbing, you're doing this, especially when you stand up, you're torquing your arms back and forth. So the other thing that I would work on, this is a gym thing, but you can do it at home. You can get manlier weights if you want to. These are
far out. I said it at the start, but far out he's lean. There is nothing to his arms. That is years and years of dieting and training to get that level of muscle loss. That's impressive. Or is it impressive? I don't know. It's impressive from a cyclist point of view.
7.5 pounds. But basically, I guess this is a bent over row. I'm not a gym person, but I would just go to the gym and kind of look around and figure out what muscle groups I wanted to hit. So this is basically what you're doing when you're smashing up a hill on the bike. No. That is the movement you're doing. That is actually the opposite of the muscles you're using. So bent over row, as he's doing there, is going to be working his back and his biceps because he's pulling against gravity. On the bike, when you're climbing out of the saddle, you probably know this, it's more of your triceps. So the action of standing when you're climbing, the movement of the handlebars, is actually a push of each arm. And that's why if you stand for long enough out of the saddle and you start getting fatigued, you'll notice it's your triceps that get sore because you're holding yourself up and pushing. It's a pushing movement, not a pulling movement if you're doing it correctly. So, this is probably not doing any harm. It's not going to hurt, but is this going to improve significantly your triceps and the muscle groups that you need when you're counterbalancing and pushing out of the saddle? Not really.
You know, I probably wouldn't, you know, this sort of stuff, if it's not heavy, it's probably not going to be doing much anyway. You'd be better off just, even if you're on a flat road, you can still climb out of the saddle. Not climb out of the saddle, you can still ride out of the saddle to simulate that. So you can ride out of the saddle on a flat road. So I'm not sure this is really doing much for me.
And pretend you're climbing. Pretend you got handlebars in the middle here, and go that distance, and get the shoulders, and whatever it is, and a tricep. I don't know.
Yeah, that exercise isn't going to work your tricep. Again, it's not doing any harm. It doesn't. If you decide to do this and you feel like you enjoy it and might help you, go for it. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's probably not the exercise to be doing to specifically improve your climbing. I would stick to doing those extended periods of time out of the saddle on the bike to help that out. That's it for this video, guys. Hope you got something out of that, and I'll catch you in the next one.